just 1 minute to 12. First of all, I'd like to thank very much the organisers for putting on what is proving to be an excellent conference. I'd like to thank Samara and Samara Training for inviting me back to Oman to speak on process safety. I'd like to thank the speakers so far who have given such illuminating, interesting and useful talks so far, and I'm sure those this afternoon will do likewise. And I'd like to thank the audience and everybody here for coming and attending and making it a successful conference, especially those people that I've already had the pleasure to be speaking to over the last day and a half. Oops, I've already had, okay. A little bit of background on myself. I'm not going to go through all of those words, but basically I'm British, but I've been working internationally for a large portion of my working life. Originally, basically oil and gas with some petrochemical background. I started off in drilling, so I've drilled oil and gas wells in various parts of the world. Then I spent a few years on quality assurance, quality control in major projects in the UK and in the North Sea. And then I went into consultancy with CW International, working on operational and HSEQ management systems, again in various parts of the world. I've lived for a good number of years, close on 20 plus years, in Brunei, working Brunei and Southeast Asia. And I came to Oman to try and resettle in Oman and develop business here in 2015, 2016, where I met a few of the people that are in the audience, including Samara. But then I was actually asked to go back to Brunei to work for the Brunei government to assist in the implementation, the explanation of, and the enforcement of new control of major accident hazard regulations that they'd recently brought in, especially in relation to the new major projects that Brunei was about to host, with companies coming into the country to build a major new refinery and to build a new fertilizer plant. So I've been asked to come and talk, and it will be very brief, it will be very scant. I'm going to be skipping over most of the slides about process safety. But what I hope to get across is a little bit of an understanding for those of you that need it on what is process safety, what is process safety management. And I've got a few pictures and a little bit of a video to show about what it goes wrong in the oil and gas and petrochemical industry. But also, for those of you not in oil and gas, I think I would advise that you may have processes in your workplaces, in your industries, where some of the tools and the techniques that I'm going to be mentioning and showing may apply. Maybe not in as complicated, as big a way as we do in the oil and gas industry, but in a scalable way, in a simpler way. So I'd like to ask you to think about how the strategies, the philosophies, the objectives of process safety management can apply to your business. Part of that I'll be covering what's happened with the laws, standards, and there's a lot of guidance out there on the internet. You'll see I'm quoting web page addresses through my presentation. I'll be listing those later as good references for you to go to for further information. And then really, I touch upon a number of the things that we can actually need to do and have in place. Two broad groups, that's in actually designing, constructing, operating, and maintaining our plants and our facilities correctly. That's the practical, really hard-nosed, practical, technical side of things. And then we need to have the right management systems in place with proper management, leadership, commitment, and support. So, what is process safety? Splitting the words up, process is really an activity by substances that may be hazardous. Generally, we think of processes that are done inside equipment, using heaters, vessels, piping, valves. I was interested to note the first speaker this morning talked about processes and said his processes were not about what we do in our plant, but about business and management processes. Now I want us to be thinking about our plants, our equipment, because these are the things, and from the hazardous materials inside them, if we do not keep control of those, they can cause serious damage to our people, to our plant, even to our communities. Process safety is about avoiding the release of the hazards, avoiding the release of the substances inside our plants. We need to be preventing those releases to prevent explosions, fires, gases that may spread, and because they're toxic, kill, disease large numbers of people in the surroundings. It's about keeping the process under control, keeping the process inside the pipework. How do we go about doing that? With good process safety management. Design, engineering, construction, operation, and maintenance. A number of the things that we've heard a little bit about in this conference, and I was particularly interested to hear the talk about preventative maintenance this morning. These are the sort of things that we need to apply for good process safety management. We need to apply the right standards, specifications, procedures. We need to have the right organization with the right people, with the right competencies, backed up with the right commitment and the right resourcing from their management. All of this is about preventing anything going wrong. It was also mentioned, let's not really talk about loss control, let's talk about loss prevention. Definitely, but we've got to be ready in case things do go wrong. We've got to be prepared for any emergency and respond effectively to minimize and contain the consequences. Process industries, I'm oil and gas. I've worked on a number of petrochemical facilities. These are the obvious things where our processes are inherently dangerous, and we have to control those. Fuel and chemical distribution and storage, I've worked for a good number of downstream companies, and our previous speaker was involved in Oman Oil, the company that's responsible for transporting and distributing the petrol and the diesel and the LPG that we put into our vehicles. There are other industries, other production processes that involve processes, taking a raw substance and making a product using industrial and manufacturing processes. Something I'm working on at the moment is to take some of the principles, philosophies, and tools of process safety management into biotechnical pharmaceuticals, which I would not have imagined would require process safety. But you Google it and you can find that there are significant incidents occurring in the biomedical industry. I've been interested to hear, we've had a speaker from a cement factory, and I was talking to our people from Sohar Aluminum yesterday. Process safety, yeah, we're taking an industrial process, but each of these processes can be very hazardous. Different types of hazards compared to oil and petrochemicals, but they can still suffer from process safety incidents. Oh, sorry. Okay, what happens when it goes wrong? There's a long list, and the list of events that have occurred through history is even longer. A few illustrations of the major ones. Somebody mentioned Bhopal yesterday, and it was mentioned the movie Pray for Rain is a very powerful, useful, interesting movie to watch. It was also mentioned yesterday, Piper Alpha, and I would point anybody, if they haven't seen it, to see Spiral to Disaster, a BBC sort of drama documentary. I've got a little clip from that, and I'm struggling to find the beeper that would allow me to play it. Could you play that little video clip for me? Sorry.
yet nothing had been done either to protect or strengthen the pipelines. At 20 past 10, the tartan gas pipeline melted and burst.
I'm going to cut that short because I've just been hinted that it's 5 minutes to go. I certainly remember where I was on the night. I was nowhere near that. I was driving, but I felt for the people on that platform after working a lot offshore. And that movie by the BBC is an excellent, almost a documentary on the sort of things that were not done right within the North Sea. And the operator that was responsible then, I'm not going to mention the name, I do know we've got a representative from that company, global company here, but it wasn't just about that operator. It was all the operators in the North Sea, and it was a government that needed to improve drastically in order to prevent a recurrence of the Piper Alpha. 2 examples from Brunei, outside the oil and gas industry. Fish factory. They use ammonia to freeze their fish. That's done in process equipment. This incident was where they were expanding the plant, and they used oxygen to clean out the pipework ahead of welding. And I'm looking around. Oxygen and welding do not go together well. It explodes, and in this incident, it killed 3 people and injured 16. I hadn't realized self-service laundries used liquefied petroleum gas, LPG, to fuel their heaters. But they do. And in July 2017, due to lack of manufacturers' installation instructions, improper maintenance, poor risk assessment about the work, an explosion led to a fatality and 2 injured people. Non-process industry, but process accidents. In Oman, I know there have been process safety incidents. Last time I was here, there was a small fire. Thankfully, I was going to say thankfully didn't. There were 3 minor injuries, I believed, in the oil pick refinery in December 2014. And with the scale of the industry here, I'm sure there's been other process safety incidents. But some that are illustrated there, not related to oil and gas stations, warehouse fires. Your own government, your own PACTA is recognizing more action needs to be done to prevent and respond effectively to fires. Lessons learnt. Certainly in the UK after Piper Alpha, there was a radical overhaul of the law, and following the Cullen inquiry, the COMA regulations that we had in place for chemical major accident hazard facilities onshore went offshore in the form of the safety case regulations. This was an implementation of the European Seveso directives after the Seveso disaster in Italy. In Brunei, we adopted COMA regulations of a similar sort of thing. So where we have Seveso regulations, COMA law addressing the major accident hazard industries, these are the sort of controls that are expected to be documented in safety cases and safety reports. There's a lot out there. The US OSHA, Occupational Safety and Health Administration, has a peer process safety management standard, 15 elements. A number of the things you'll recognize in that list have already been spoken about in this conference, and there's a lot of information about other ones. The American Institute of Chemical Engineers, through the Center for Chemical Process Safety, provides a framework. Again, a number of the items in there you'll recognize as good safety management. In the UK, our Energy Institute provided another framework, and again, the list of things that we expect to see for good process safety management are there. In Oman, you've not gone as far there, but within your national law, but SOHA port rules and regulations describe an expectation on the tenants within the SOHA industrial port to actually compile Seveso-style safety reports. What do all these things require? What do we require to have good process safety management? That's good quality design and construction, using relevant standards and specifications, making sure, somebody mentioned yesterday, making sure that good process safety management goes into procurement and supply. You've got to buy good quality equipment and then install it according to the appropriate specifications and construct your plant properly. Operations and maintenance. This morning's talk on maintenance basically covered very effectively the need for operations and maintenance to work very closely together with competent people, competent organizations. Risk management. Effective risk management is the mainstay, as a number of speakers have said, of a good safety management system. Various tools and techniques. The gentleman that talked about HAZOPs this morning is more on technical safety than I am. I've done a lot of work on emergency preparedness and response. We've got to be ready when things don't go right. We've got to have safety management systems and safety cases. And I would point to the old version of the UK Health and Safety Executives Manual on safety management systems for a simple approach to safety management systems. Yep, go ahead. And already has been mentioned a number of times, leadership and commitment from your board of your company, the leadership of your organization. Further information questions, lots of information out there from various agencies, from various technical safety expert consultants, through Samara training, or directly to me. Thank you.